Okay, it looks like we're ready to go. Welcome everybody to the USA Softball Sport Development Series. This is a series of 10 topics aired bi-weekly with the goal being to educate all forms of softball in a different, innovative way. We're away from the field. We obviously know that there's a pandemic going on, and the beautiful thing about technology is the fact that we get to meet with amazing panelists and go over pretty important information, and we get to keep our softball world pretty much all together. So I am your host, Lauren Chamberlain, a former professional softball player and member of Team USA. I am now a softball advocate and a host on the side, so I'm your host for this series. This is not about me. This is about the amazing panelists that we have here today. So before I introduce them, our topic, this is episode 3. This is nutrition, hydration, and self-care. I can't think of anything that's more important right now, specifically that self-care. So we're going to dive into this topic. It's incredible. We've tried to cover all bases here with a coach, a player, players, and an expert. So we have all types of great information about to come at you guys. Before we start, it's my honor to introduce our panel. I know you guys, a couple of you personally, and so I'm excited to be on this panel with you guys, kind of full circle moments with you guys, but we're gonna go down the list. This might be a little tiring. I might need to take a break and get some water because you guys are just studs. So we're gonna start. Current head coach of the 2021 US Olympic softball team, has been the head coach of Team USA since 2011, assistant coach of the 2004 Olympic softball team gold medalists, head coach at the University of South Florida, and a national advisory board member for the Positive Coaches Alliance since 2011, Ken Erickson. We're doing
Thank you.
for Next, we have a registered dietitian who specializes in sports nutrition, currently provides nutrition support for Olympic team sport athletes, provides nutrition education and support to athletes from the youth level and up, and helps athletes optimize their performance through food, Rachel Mack. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Next, we have a member of the men's slow pitch national team since 2018, dedicated business owner and trainer of Done Right Athletics, multi-sport athlete born and raised in League City, Texas boy, played baseball at Prairie View A&M University, and father to a beautiful 6-year-old girl. I love that we have that in there. Ben Dunn. Thanks, Ben. Last but not least, 6-time Japan League champion, 5-time NPF champion, 2008 Olympian, holds the NCAA record in career 2,440 and single season strikeouts with 724. Holds the NCAA record in career wins with 189. Let me take a breath. Last but not least, current member of Team USA and 2021 pitcher on the team, Monica Abbott. Huge round of applause. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, let me just throw that paper over here. Nutrition, hydration, self-care. Again, these topics are so important, and they really do transcend the field. I think it's cool when we can take topics that revolve around softball, but they also revolve around us as human beings, right? If I want to be the best human that I can in society and put myself in the best position to be a good citizen, right, I need to make sure that my nutrition, my hydration, and my self-care are all in check. So again, we've got an incredible lineup here to talk about their specific individual experiences. So we're going to start with some general questions just across the board, just to get everybody's thoughts and feelings on this topic. Rachel, we're going to start with you. Okay, you're in the hot seat.
All right, here we go.
Talk about the importance of nutrition in sports, hydration in sports, self-care in sports, just in general.
All right. Well, I think that question is broad, and we can start broad and potentially go a little more specific. But in general, nutrition, hydration are really prioritizing the two of those are, to me, one of the best things you can do for self-care. Making sure you are properly fueled, properly hydrated, really just sets you up for success, both on and off the field, on and off the court, kind of on and off everything, if you will. So I'd say the importance of nutrition in sport is really that food is fuel. Food lets you do anything you want to do on the field, in the classroom, sitting here today. Food really just fuels your body for performance. And then hydration plays a critical role in that as well. Our bodies are primarily made up of water. So making sure you're getting enough fluid, water throughout the day, make sure that all of those biological processes are really functioning optimally. And then self-care. Self-care looks like a variety of things for each one of us, but just in general, prioritizing yourself and understanding that every single one of us is an individual. We have individual needs. So understanding that, especially when it comes to nutrition, something that's going to work for your teammate or your friend or someone you see on the internet might not work for you. So taking a step back and really prioritizing yourself and working with yourself and giving yourself a little bit of self-love and saying, hey, okay, this might not work for me. I might need to do something different. And just giving yourself acceptance in that so that you can move forward.
Yeah. So to follow up with you, you worked with and you do work with Olympic athletes. We know that to be an Olympic athlete, that's just such a huge jump in commitment to yourself as a human, as a person, nutrition being the biggest thing. Talk about the difference. You've worked with youth, you've worked with Olympics. Talk about that gap and how important these topics are to Olympic athletes.
So I would say the kind of biggest difference in that jump is the amount of time people spend training. So I'd say at the youth movement, an hour to a day is considered a lot. Some of the athletes I work with are training like 6 hours a day. So just that huge demand from a physical standpoint. You can probably get through 1 to 2 days of training that way if you're not optimizing your nutrition. By the end of the week, you're going to be spent. So making sure that you are making nutrition choices that allow you to day in and day out optimize performance. So quantity of food, right? It's going to look a lot different when you're training that much. And then the types of foods you're putting into your body, making sure you have carbohydrates. Carbohydrates fuel everything we do. Protein is critical as well for muscle development and for just bodily functions. And then looking at hydration as well. In general, the majority of us don't need as much water because we're not sweating a ton. If you're exercising, training 6 hours a day, your fluid needs go through the roof. So take a normal kind of 2-hour training session, magnify that, everything just exponentially increases.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're so happy to have you here. Thanks for tackling that first question. Monica, you're up next. How important is nutrition to you, and when did you decide that it was a really big part of your game, or when did you realize how important it was?
Wow, what a question. Nutrition is so important because we're hearing, it gives you the energy and the capability to withstand a lot of things in sport. And as a professional, you're training for multiple hours over and over again. But I think what I've learned about my own nutrition and for a lot of things is as a youth athlete going into college, I felt like they were trying to bulk me up and kind of get me strong so that I could build more muscle. Once I started playing with the national team, I realized that there was a lot of different types of athletes on my team, and they all had different nutritional things that they did, and all their bodies looked different. And I realized that hey, what I need to find out what's really important for me. And does that mean that I need to try to build muscle? How many calories do I need to build muscle? How many calories do I need if I want to be more of an explosive athlete versus bigger muscles? Or do I want to, lean out a lot more because I'm working to be faster? What are those kind of nutritional values and needs? And as I have grown in my professional career, post college with the national team, playing overseas, playing professionally, I've had the opportunity to kind of alter those and change those every year based on what I think worked for me. Was I able to throw harder? Was I able to sustain multiple games? And how is my body being affected by what I'm putting in my mouth, and food and drink?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit it. This point that you made was so relatable, that everybody's different, right? Not everything works. Say someone is super shredded and they're doing this, and this, it might backfire on me if I'm doing that. So I think it is very important that, you took the time to say, what works for me? How am I going to be most effective for my team? And really taking that time. I know it's easy to Pinterest a diet, you guys. It's easy to look online and say, how am I going to lean out, or how am I going to bulk up? But I think really taking that time, and again, it goes to that level of investment that you have. We're talking to Monica Abbott, Team USA pitcher. She is top of the line, has taken that initiative to be the best that she can be for her country. So
Yeah.
Great point to that, Monica.
Yeah, Lo, you know, if I could just say, like, I think what some people don't often realize is like just what I did is I started to weigh myself. I started to step on the scale. And a lot of times people worry about the number in a negative way of what they're stepping on the scale for. But at the end of the day, everybody performs at a different weight the best. So I had to find out what was my playing weight.
Mm-hmm.
What weight is Monica Abbott going to be the best pitcher at? Throw the hardest, make that rise ball spin, you know, all those sort of things. So what weight are you most comfortable? Does your body perform the best at? And when you know that number, you can manage everything else.
Yeah, great point. Totally agree.
And
all right.
I just have, can I interject there? And I think, like Monica said, it's really important. Everybody is different, and a lower number is not necessarily better. So just understanding that that number is going to be potentially different than somebody else, and lower is not always better. So finding that like kind of sweet spot for you, and it takes time. It's not an overnight thing, but we're really dialing that in.
Yeah. And to add to that too, society, I know there's quite a few girls that are probably tuned in right now. Society has a way of telling you that you need to be a certain thing. So keep that in mind. If you are an athlete, this calls for something different as well. So again, try to not zone in on the societal pressures as much. And we could dive into that another time, but to that point, that was really good. All right, Coach Erickson, you're up. You ready? We've got this for you. How important is self-care to you? And coaches got to take time away from the field too. So talk about that.
Yeah, probably one of the biggest issues that I see in travel ball coaches and young college coaches is the inability to let the game go. I learned my lesson. Happened to be 39 years old at the time. And I came home from a ball game. My daughter was 4 years old. We got our butts handed to us in a game at the University of South Florida. Usually went in the locker room afterwards, showered, and went home. And my house is only about 7 minutes from the ball field. And got to the front door, and there's my daughter with two Barbie dolls in her hands, Ken and Barbie, and looked at me. And I kind of knew what she wanted to do. And she looked at me and said, "Oh, you lost." And it was a smack in the face right away that, you know, you brought the game home with you, you know. And then, you know, she put her head down and then she looked up at me and said, "You want to play Barbies?" And it just grabbed me. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go play Barbies. And obviously I was Ken. And then, so we played Barbies, and during that time, there was a realization that why are you bringing the game home with you? It's a game that kids play. You already played. You already had yours, you know, and all you are is a messenger for the future of how the game was supposed to be played. And you become studious at it, and those are the type of things that make you successful. But, you know, why are you taking the game with you after it's over? You know, there's got to be a time, and you tell your players this, but you don't abide by the same rules about you have to have short memories, whether they're good or bad. And, you know, even though as a coach, you're still into the next game, you've already got 16 different lineups in your head ready to go for the next game, but there's got to be a time that you have to let it go. And then I compounded that, Lauren, with the fact that only about 9 months later, 9/11 occurred. And we shut down everything with Team USA in that fall. We were getting ready for the World Championships in 2002, and we were supposed to get together in Chula Vista, but everything got shut down for about 2 months. And there was stuff that was shut down in your local areas also, if you remember. There was no traveling, you know, schools were in a different place. And so there was about a 3-week period where there was no softball. And it was the first time, kind of like now, where you got to smell the roses a little bit, and you went, what am I doing? Making myself crazy like I am, obsessing over a game that you have to trust that your team is prepared, and you can't go out there and you can't worry about it. You've got to trust the players that you have as long as you're teaching. So the self-care part came with that revelation, Lauren, and then the discovery of meditation, the discovery of nothing, doing nothing, for an hour and a half in the morning when you wake up, except maybe go for a walk or a run or do your physical conditioning, but shut the phones off and the computers off. I don't have social media. Monica always gets on me about it. She says, Coach, did you hear? I go, no, Monica, I didn't hear about it, this
A
and
little
that.
jealous.
So,
I'm a little jealous. There is a part of me that wishes we could just completely
yeah.
get away.
And it was during that time that I said, can I carry this over,
Right.
through it? And I answer my emails during time slots, no longer than 75 minutes a day.
Mhm.
But I'm telling you, my blood pressure went from, when I say this, went from 144 over 98 to 123 over 78 consistently, just
Wow.
by getting rid of the noise,
Right.
the irrelevance of it all. And I it was had the fortunate ability, and unfortunate for you with all the injuries that you had, but you know, I hope you remember that our team at that time, and the teams that Monica have been on, it's been really, really cool in respect of there's not a lot of high emotional deal. It's, I trust you guys. I trust the players. And it's not just because you guys are elite athletes, because we learned a lot along
Mhm.
the way, but now you have to go out there and figure it all out and screw up. And it's okay, because every time you screw up, you learn something,
Yeah.
you get better for it. So, but I think that's the part of the teaching part that has the self-care for me is made it palatable to be in it a long time. I don't worry about the scoreboard.
Right.
Okay. I worry about playing the game the right way. Okay. I only get emotionally distraught if we're doing things that we're not. Why are we doing that? Because we don't train that way. So then somebody's off on a different agenda.
Right.
So, but no, it's a
I think
game
that,
that kids play. And I think if we realize that, we're in good shape.
yeah, I love that. And I want to circle back around with you later on to talk about those specific practices and what we can encourage other coaches to do. Ben, you're up. Talk about hydration. Talk about how important that is to you. And if there's been times in your career where you feel like, okay, maybe I wasn't as hydrated, talk about hydration.
I think it's kind of a collective amount of what everyone's talked about so far. Is whenever I left high school, I was 165 pounds. Stepping into a college world that people, sophomores, juniors are already 215, 220, 230 pounds. I never had to worry about hydration in high school until I stepped into college and I put on some more weight. And I actually ended up having to get a nutritionist to understand what my body needed, the right amounts, what, any kind of out of sport activities I did, if it was eating or whatever, and how it affected my body. And then, we were running. We had a terrible series against one of our biggest competition in our SWAC conference, and we ran an incredible amount after that series. And that's whenever I realized that the nutrition that I was, paying attention to my body and actually sticking to the code that the nutritionist kind of laid out for me and my catcher, uh, it completely changed on how our bodies were reacting to those workouts. We were getting worn out pretty bad on some long distance runs. And me and the catcher, which typically catchers aren't known for being the most agile and athletic and long distance runners in the world. We're the only ones that were kind of surviving that punishment. And then I think as I got older, as what Abbott was saying is, I got older, I had to adjust what my workouts were and what kind of intake I was having, and paying a little bit more attention to amino acids and maybe less sloppy intake on foods. And I was never really a big soda person, so the water intake has never really been an issue for me. And now I'm 36 years old, and playing slow pitch softball, it's not as what everybody might think or assume it is. I'm running at minimum 25 miles an outfield in the weekend, and those are sprints. In our bigger tournaments, on our bigger stadium fields that are 330 down the line, 425 in center, I'll be running 40 to 50 miles on a weekend. And again, being at 36 years old, paying attention to that hydration has completely changed how I look at what I need to be doing for my body. It's a completely different weight preparation, preseason, during season, maintenance. And I think I did not appreciate the hydration portion of it until the past 2 years. whenever I realize how much I'm running, and I look over at other teams or other outfielders or other competitors out there, and they're absolutely struggling with being able to, run 5 miles at a different position or 10 miles or just dealing with the heat or acclimating. We play all over the country. So, fortunately for me, being in Houston, it's 100% humidity for about 4 months out of the year. And we play in Florida an incredible amount at the Space Coast Stadium. And it's all turf. So it's 120.
Oh, I know that turf. I know that turf.
Right? It's 130 degrees on that turf. And being able to have that hydration set, not the day before, but, the week before, the 2 weeks before, your food intake is effective. It takes your body a couple weeks to really react to the different changes that you're doing to your body. So
No.
I think that's whenever I really realized it was probably over the past 2 years, whenever I'm kind of more mature in age and making bigger adjustments in my intake.
Yeah, and it takes experience. It's interesting. Well, I stopped playing, so I'm not playing anymore. So my challenge is, it's actually funny, Kat Osterman's in on this challenge. Monica and Coach, you'll appreciate this. We're doing a gallon challenge. So we're literally in a group text. You have to drink a gallon of water a day. I thought this was gonna be easy. I am going to the restroom every 2 minutes, and it's really exposing how much water I did not drink. So I know that's kind of the funny side of it, but you guys, you drink more water, okay? Drink more water. I think we can all agree, drink more water. It doesn't matter if you're on the Olympic team or you're an 8-year-old, drink the water.
Not everybody needs a gallon a day, but
we can clarify. I'm not the expert. Rachel's going to give you guys the specifics. Rachel, we're going to actually stick with you. At what age do you think it's important to really start having conversations about nutrition, about hydration, self-care? This is for both parents and players.
So I think that's a good question. I think that what it can look like at different ages will change, but I think it's important to start early. If you get into habits of eating before practice, eating before a training session, making sure you have a water bottle with you at school, those are habits that you can start in elementary school. Those are habits that you can start young. And I think that sometimes youth athletes don't really think about those things because potentially their parents have brought something for them. So they have these habits that they might not have started themselves, but somebody else has set up for them and they feel supported in that way. But I think that prioritizing nutrition can look a little different, but as you get older, kind of dialing things in. But I would see no problem with starting with a youth athlete in elementary school, making sure that they have a snack beforehand, potentially a snack during, if they didn't have an opportunity to eat before, making sure they have a water bottle with them all day. Those are habits that you can start young, and just if you have those basic habits, you can really do a lot in terms of sport performance, and then kind of dial in, as everybody's saying, as you get older. And potentially you start super young in that you don't have to learn those things in high school because you know that you need to eat beforehand. Or potentially when athletes come to the elite level at the Olympic level, it's, hey, did you eat before practice? And the answer is no. So I think that some of those initial habits, we can definitely start really young and see performance implications from them.
Yeah, I think about some of my best years and best performances. I really did actually hone in on that stuff. And Monica, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. But I think back to high school and even early college. What if I actually dialed in like earlier? You know what I mean? Like, what if I actually was so invested in those high school years? How good could I have been, or how good could athletes start to be? So I do think it's important to start early, for sure.
And it doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? We don't have to have 10 different sport foods. We don't have to have like a crazy nutrition plan. It's just like, hey, bring a snack with you. Eat something before you go on the field for 3 hours. Bring a water bottle. Those are things like easy 1, 2, 3 that have huge performance enhancements potentially.
Yeah.
Rachel and Lauren, I want to jump in on that
Sure.
for this reason. Youth coaches have to get over the fact that nutrition during practices and during training times is okay. Okay, multiple water breaks is okay. Yeah, and that refueling, after 45 minutes, sometimes of the intensity of your workout, a recovery snack is so big during these practice times that the old school aspect of suck it up should be out the window. That's almost child abuse.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that hopefully this audience, that's the younger audience of coaches and parents, realize that it's okay to fuel even during the training time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. Thanks for saying that, Coach. Appreciate that. It's critical.
Appreciate the
It's not
backup.
just to suck it up.
Coach E, we're going to actually stay with you. I want to get back to your practices. If you can jump in, I know you touched a little bit on meditation. That's right up self-care alley. So I want to talk about meditation. Why did you jump into that? And then if you can give some suggestions to the coaches on here, just little things that they can be doing.
You know, having played, I retired at age 37 years old. So Ben, keep going and break that record. But you know, the longer you're in the game, the more that you pick up things. And I was very fortunate to have some really good coaching when I was younger that I listened to. And it was around age 31 years old that I'm like, listen, I want to play another 5-6 years. And I stopped eating red meat. I stopped drinking alcohol completely. And started doing a lot of psycho-cybernetics of mind over muscle type of mental work. Along those lines came in through meditation. And so it happened that the last 5-6 years, I had some pretty good years numbers wise. And it all came down to calming the brain down and making myself more with open focus because I wasn't locked in. And nutrition had a lot to do with it. But I also thought the mental training of realization that what's the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And once you realize that, it's easier to delve into maybe even some more things to calm the breathing, to calm the heart rates, to not rise to the occasion, but just to be a very steady situation, no matter how big the stage was. And so even today, I think the pride factor of me is that even in coaching, because you want it so much sometimes for the team to do well and successful, realize that I think this is not to sound goofy or way out of whack here, but it's already in the cards. The inevitable is the inevitable. And if your team is trained the right way, they have a great shot to win. And that's all you do. And that's all you can leave it up to. And so for you to try to over control the game, you know, or overreact when something doesn't go wrong, you know, your players look at you and they see your body language and they see your facial reactions. They see all these type of things. And that's important. You know, that's professional to realize that all you are is there to facilitate them to be able to play the game at the high level. Having played and having understand the nuances of a high level stuff makes it easier to relate that to players. But I think also, and I think everybody would be in agreement on this panel, is that when the word elite athlete is thrown around so much by travel coaches, by college coaches, elite level athletes choose to be elite the longer they're in the game. You know, it's so interesting that we do so much in college to try to teach and educate, and some take upon it, and the people on this panel have, but others don't. You know, they'll go out after the good meal after the game and go to Taco Bell and pick up a 6-pack of beer and you know, all for naught, right? But the people that choose to be elite in their habits do so after the age of 21, 22. And so the longer you can play the game, and both Lauren Chamberlain and Monica Abbott were fortunate enough to be in this game. And I can tell you that they would probably agree that you learn a lot more once you're out of college than you do in college. College is player development, elite level stuff comes afterwards, and it comes from maturation. So, you know, going back to your question, and the point being is not to be long-winded, but it's an accumulation of knowledge and education and listening to others that have been there. And I think that's where I got most of that philosophy out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a player that has played for you before, your steadiness and your steady hand as a coach was appreciated. So we appreciate you taking the time to be the best Olympic head coach that you can be. I know your players probably can say the same. So we appreciate you. Ben, you're up. Talk about this. We're going to step away from hydration. Who are you away from slow pitch? Who are you? What are you doing? What are you passionate about? Talk about that self-care side of things that, you know, allows you to be the best player that you can be when you are playing.
So away from slow pitch, as you kind of read into the bio a little bit, you know, first and foremost, I'm a father. So she takes a decent amount of my time, especially with everything. Sorry, I have a motion sensor. Especially with everything going on, you know, I have her and I spent an incredible amount of time together, but she loves to work out. So she has these little stations she does at our gym. And outside of that, I own a facility, Done Right Athletics, is a LLC, and it's an athletic development facility, which is Playoff Performance. That's a DBA. And what we do here is it's athletic development for any type of athletes. Predominantly, it's baseball and fast pitch. We do get some football players and some basketball players that like to do some agility stuff. And a lot of it is, I feel like I'm related to Erickson here whenever we're talking about the mental side of things. And a lot of it is picking up, acknowledging players, their body language whenever they have success or failures inside the cages, or whenever, parents send you videos, or if you log on to the Game Changers and you see how kids are acting. So my goal whenever I open this is, because I'm from League City, is to develop our community to have those competitive athletes again, kind of how I grew up. Obviously, there's so many distractions in the world today with social media, video games, the whole get outside and play thing is a little bit more difficult for kids to grasp. So my goal with this business is to get the athletes in here, get them prepared, get them mentally prepared, physically prepared, and hopefully build our community back up, not just for on the field, but off the field activities too. Be a part of your community, help people out, be a positive energy, if it's to your peers, to your teammates, to your teachers, to your parents, across the board. So it's kind of my life. I'm also a procurement manager. I work for a safety company. I've been with them for 13 years. So I wear a few hats, but in the gist of it, that's what I do outside of slow pitch softball.
Yeah. How much of what you do outside of your sport? I know when I started, I have a facility here in Oklahoma as well. When I started working with kids a lot, I learned way more about myself as a player. And I feel like my best years came after I started like coaching in a way. Like I almost had to dumb the game down. And then I was like, wait, it's not that crazy. Wait, it's not that much. So how much of, your coaching side and training side has opened you up as a player and helped you develop?
Well, I think in some different, routed ways, it's meditated me mentally a little bit in the aspect that, whenever I would look back, whenever I was a 12-year-old or 13-year-old or 14-year-old, that one play was the end of the world. If it went for you or didn't go for you.
Right.
And now, you look, I'm much older now, and I look back, and it wasn't the end of the world. So I think what's taught me a lot about myself is kind of keeping that even keel a little bit, not getting too worked up on certain things. If it's a play, I mean, it can be, sport related or not sport related. Kind of what he was saying is that, what's going to happen is going to happen. You getting yourself worked up or getting worked up to where other people feed off you, it's not going to change ultimately the outcome of what's supposed to be happening. So I think that's really what's taught me a lot about myself is it's not a huge deal.
Right. That's awesome. Right on. Kids that are watching, you guys teach us sometimes more than we teach you. So we appreciate you. Monica, we're coming back over to you. Talk about your specific practices that you've come up with as an older athlete now. What are your best practices? What makes you Monica Abbott?
In the self-care range, I think some of the best practices that I really believe in what I call a balanced lifestyle. And it really is about like being able to separate your on the field stuff and your off the field stuff so that you're able to re-energize and reinvigorate your life for your performance on the field. And for me, that can be anything from FaceTiming family members and friends to just have that social interaction and that social connection. It can be, social and like creating a game night or going out to dinner or, getting a massage or how am I taking care of myself, even doing like a self-care home routine, just little things like that so that I can take the time to be fulfilled inside and, you know, upstairs up here, away from the field, so that once I come back to the field, I can give all that energy out. A lot of times when, you know, you get antsy, you get anxiety, you stress yourself out, you know, the world seems like it's getting so big and all of these things are happening, all these stressors are happening on me in my life. It's because I am not taking the time to re-energize myself. I'm giving on the field and giving off the field. But at some point you have to be able to take good energy back in. And there's tons of ways you can do it. You have to take good energy back in to re-energize yourself for your performance on the field.
Yeah. So for those of you watching, especially coaches too, you're hearing it straight from a player. You're hearing it from Monica Abbott. There are things outside of softball, right, that should be encouraged. I know that coaches want to check in with their players. How many swings are you taking? How many ground balls have you taken? How about check in one time, have a phone call? What do you do off the field, right? How was that choir performance that you did? Or how was that, swim meet over there? That something that has nothing to do with softball. I think checking in on those things is extremely important. And Monica, thanks for sharing those little tips and tricks that we as athletes, we know when we're doing them, it's easier said than done. This does take as much time really as taking 100 swings. And that's a challenge to you players as well. If you can take 100 swings, you can figure out a way to, channel your self-care. Let's see, we have some fan questions. Yes, we do. Rachel, our first fan question is going to go to you. We talk about hydration. How much is that? Like, I know we say like, what is hydrated? Like, talk about like some guidelines that these players can follow.
Yeah, of course. So I think hydration is very individual. We all need a little bit of a different amount every day, dependent on how much you lose in sweat. But I'd say a really great place to start is basically taking your body weight, divide it by 2, and that is kind of a minimum number of ounces you need in a day. So basically, if you weigh 150 pounds, you need 75 ounces a day, and that is essentially like 2 40-ounce Hydro Flasks would be sufficient there. And then as you increase training duration or practice duration, you're going to need more because you're losing some from sweat. The easiest way to check in with hydration is to check your pee color. Everybody goes to the bathroom, check out what color it is. That's a great way to check in with your body and say, hey, am I excreting? What color is my pee? And you're always kind of looking for a light yellow situation. I like to say like a light lemonade. If you're in the apple juice category, if it's a little dark, you need to drink some water. So those are kind of the basics of hydration. Make sure you always have a water bottle with you. If you're peeing, 2 to 3 times an hour, you probably are drinking too much water. If it's been kind of 3 hours, you probably need some more water. Just like take a step back, check in with your pee color, and go from there. And don't stress about it. It's like some hydration is one of those things that kind of it's variable. It can change. So you can be really hydrated like 5 hours ago, and potentially right now, if I have had nothing to drink, I can become dehydrated. So know that you are in a more dehydrated state and you're in that like apple juice category, you can drink some water and get out of it. So
perfect. For nutrition, Rachel, we're sticking with you. Talk about what these kids can be eating right before a game, during a game, and then what a good after game snack could be.
All right. So I think this goes to preference and what you can tolerate, but I think some really easy guidelines here are before a game, primarily we're looking to eat some carbohydrates. So something like bread or fruit, potentially like a pasta, something. So I'd say PB&J is my go-to easy snack option because you have primarily carbohydrate from the bread and from the jelly with a little bit of protein and fat from that peanut butter. So that's a really nice pregame option. You want carbohydrates because they're easily digestible and they are that primary fuel source during activity. So they allow you to sprint really quickly to the next base, to run in the outfield. They allow for mental cognition. So if you are trying to critically think, make a play on the field, Carbohydrates are what's fueling your brain during that. So making sure you have some carb beforehand and then also during. So I'd say kind of before and during focuses on carb. So something that's going to be really easy to digest potentially could be some fruit, a granola bar. Pretzels are awesome because they have salt on them. So that's a really nice food source of electrolytes. I'd say those are kind of my go-to recommendations there. And then afterward, we need some protein and some carb. So you need carbohydrate to replace anything that you lost potentially during that 2-hour game, if you will. And then you need some protein to minimize any potential muscle breakdown and to kind of put you in a really good place there. So afterward, that can just be a meal. It doesn't necessarily need to be a protein shake. So if you have accessibility to eating a meal within an hour after a game, I'd say that's probably your best option. And then make sure there's some color, some fruit and veg on that plate as well.
Great. Next fan question. This can be a two-part. Well, Monica, we'll start with you, and then Ben, we'll go to you. During a pandemic, Monica, you actually had a chance to come back and pitch a couple nights ago. Talk about that downtime as a big-time athlete. How do you keep yourself motivated? How does your self-talk, your self-care, how does that stay when you're kind of like up in there? What are some tips and tricks that you guys have been doing?
Yeah, I think, okay, so during the pandemic, one thing that I thought really helped me up front is I decided to set a routine. And I changed that routine by, mostly during the pandemic, I changed it by the month. But I decided like the biggest thing for me to do is to get on a schedule. How many days do I want to pitch? How many do I think is necessary right now? Do I need to take a big chunk of time off? Or is it better to just kind of slowly maintain and maybe work on some things that you don't necessarily get enough time to do during the season or when you're preparing for a season? So I worked a lot on range of motion things, mobilities, just obviously refreshing and re-energizing and taking time to connect with people as we were going through as we continue to go through the global pandemic has been really important. But for me, setting a schedule, and then I set some, really easy goals. Like I had really easy goals like, okay, I want to try to do this mobility workout twice a week on Tuesday and Thursday. I'm going to pitch. I know right now I'm not going to have a game for almost, at least 2 months, maybe longer. What does that look like pitching wise? How much? And I work my way backwards. When do I need to actually be on the mound? When can I just throw a long toss? When can I just work on my leg drive drills? And just really breaking it down in the simplest of ways. So you're still able to do the things that you love within your sport and find ways to have fun in a positive, energetic way, which is what softball is. And use that to also hopefully look long-term when you finally have the opportunity to get on the field and play a game again.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to the next time we see you on the field because it's always amazing. Ben, you're up.
Yeah, I think for preparation, I was a little lucky because even with all the gyms closed, I still somewhat have a gym here. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was constantly working out with kids still because I was still kind of heavy with my high school kids and some of the college kids that were on breaks. They would come in. And so I was still long tossing and I was still doing shoulder workouts and arm care strength programs. It's just this time I was actually doing them with the kids instead of just telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Kind of to talk about what Abbott was doing too is, I needed to work on a lot of range of motion in my hips and my core. I was able to get a lot of focus with that. And when typically you go to a gym, you might not focus as much on range of motion and hips. You might not focus as much on stretching. So this is kind of that golden opportunity to do a lot of stretching, a lot of core workouts, because there's really zero reason to skip it. I think that's really what my preparation was. We've played 3 tournaments now. We played a duel in Florida at the Space Coast, and then we played in Cincinnati this past weekend. And we played in Arizona and outside Scottsdale not too long ago, and it was 118 degrees outside. And that's what we opened our season with. And it was a struggle for a lot of people, but thankfully between the nutrition, the hydration, a lot of mental aspect of it, right? You know, you got to be mentally prepared to and kind of psych yourself up in certain situations. Like he was saying earlier, is mind over body. And but yeah, I think that's what helped me, is staying active with these kids, staying active in here, and able to dive into those areas that I typically don't, preparing for the season.
Right. Both you and Monica addressed almost, targeting those things that you might not have done before, or you finally have the time to, do some things. And that's also mentally as well. If you haven't really unpacked a certain part of your game that you struggle with, or you have a anxiety about something and you haven't ever addressed that because you just haven't had the time, hey, now's the time. Let's start unpacking that stuff and be the best player that you guys can be when you do get back on the field. So coaches, please encourage that self-work as well in your players. You can get creative, come up with little challenges. Hey, let everybody start journaling, right? That's something that we can do with self-care. Diving into who these players are as people is important as well. We have one more fan question. Coach E, this is for you. As a college coach, you're incoming freshman. If you can give some solid tips, because we know that you've seen that transition from high school coming into college. What are your tips for incoming freshmen, whether it has to do with nutrition, hydration, or self-care? What can they expect?
You can expect a complete change from what you've been through. From the time management program, which nothing can prepare you for that. And it's so interesting when you hear high school coaches and travel coaches say, I'm preparing you for college. I'm going to ask that question to Lauren Chamberlain and Monica Abbott. Did they prepare you for college, right? And so to a certain point they did. But they can't prepare you for the overall change in your life. Right. Okay, it's not just about the softball. The game is still 60 feet from the back of home plate to the front of first base. We get that, right? It's actually 59 feet if you know the rules. But anyway, the point being is that it's a whole lifestyle change. And then the expectations for you to keep up with the Joneses, because you're coming to a team that already has veterans that have been through it for at least 2, 3, 4 years. You have a different daily schedule. You are now responsible not just for yourself in a showcase game, but you're responsible for 22 other young women in your program, and you represent a school and you represent a community. So the biggest thing is to try and have them feel not overwhelmed, but try to embrace them as part of the family. And you're going to make mistakes along the way. And for the coaches to have patience with young people. And if any coach ever uses the phrase, you should know that, then you're not actually doing your profession at due diligence. You're a teacher. So make sure that you cover things and never expect a player to know things. And that goes from every college coach that comes in like, do you know how to tie your shoes? Do you know how to put your socks on? Do you know that the locker combinations here work this way? And so it's a whole new thing. And just think about this. People themselves in general, in team situations, want to fit in. They want to actually please not only their teammates, but they want to please their coaches. So if you take that into consideration and understand that, you can also see the over-pleasers and try to get to them right away and say, stop pleasing me. Okay, you've already pleased me by coming to the University of whatever. Okay, now we want you to play ball, feel comfortable, and you try to make a very comfortable environment for those people, because it's such a great game and it's so great to be part of a team, because you'll never be part of a team again once you graduate college or once you retire from the game. Right. So you're trying to make it a great experience right from the get-go.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, we could keep talking for hours and hours. I know that we can do that, but as we wrap, thank you so much to USA Softball for the platform. I know this is incredible information coming to you guys each time we get on here, and just want to personally thank all of our panelists for their input, being raw, being open, and being authentic as always. We appreciate you all. This interview is going to be housed on USA Softball Facebook page, so you guys can rewatch it there if you'd like. It will also be on usasoftballeducation.com, so feel free to check out all the tips and tricks from that website. I know it's a very great resource for you players and coaches. Join us back here on Facebook Live for our next topic, recruiting. Everybody loves to talk about recruiting. That's going to be a pretty powerful panel. So follow along with USA Softball Instagram, follow along on Twitter, follow along with any personal Instagram, IG accounts that are going on here to get the latest and greatest from USA Softball. Wow. Whew. Yeah, I feel great. You guys good? All right. Thank you
job. You did good.
so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.